You are listening to the Bob and Kevin Show with Bob Beattybar
and Kevin Giescheski. Each week we cover relevant tech and social issues related to technology.
And more weeks than not, we're joined by special guests to add additional perspective to our topics.
Our website is bobandkevin.show.
And our episodes can be found on virtually any podcast network.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Just search for Bob and Kevin Show. Good evening and welcome to the Bob and Kevin Show. Tonight, Bob and Kevin are going to go off script a little bit and talk about college and college choices. So we're going to cover everything from is college the thing to do or not, what your options are, some pricing strategies, pricing in general, and our experiences as parents with children attending college and children getting ready to attend college. So no tech tonight. Just a fireside chat, and I've got the fire in the background.
Very nice, Bob. But is it keeping you warm? That's the question I have for you.
Always.
As
toasty.
You're wearing a sweatshirt. I totally don't believe it. All right. So tonight we're talking colleges, and you want to give a little more context. What about colleges are we talking about?
Well, I think we're talking about the financial implications, but also some societal implications as well. You know, I think one of the things that we talk about is, you know, is college the choice that everyone should be making? And if they don't want to make that college choice, what options do they have? So I'm just kind of ready to roll.
Bob, did you go to college?
I did. I attended Ball State University. Have a 4-year degree that took me, I think, 4.5. I think I did end up getting out under 5. And degrees in journalism. How about you?
Well, before you talk to me, can you give people an idea where Ball State University is? I know where it's at, but...
Ball State University is located 45 miles northeast of Indianapolis, Indiana, in the beautiful off downtown area of Muncie.
All right. So to answer your question, I went to 2 colleges, and I got a degree from each one. My first degree is an associate's degree from Purdue University, also located in Indiana, but the West Central, actually closer to you. And I have a second degree, a 4-year degree from Western Governors University, which is an online university, which sounds dirty just saying, but...
Does not, man. It's just one of the options that kids have these days, kids and adults.
Yes.
I mean, if you can get away without having to do room and board, which is one of the things we're probably going to touch on. So were you on campus at Purdue for your associates?
I was not. In fact, so Purdue and Indiana University kind of have satellite campuses all over the state. I went to...
Ooey-pooey. They have one that's combined even.
Yes. So I went to the combined Indiana-Purdue University of Fort Wayne. So that's where I got my 2-year degree, and it only took me a short 5 years to do so.
Ooey-pooey FW. Nice.
So it's called IPFW here, but the hubbub is, I believe they're either going to call it just Fort Wayne University soon, or they're going to tell Indiana University to pound sand and go somewhere else, and it's just going to be Purdue Fort Wayne. So,
ooh.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the $1 million question. How did you pay for said colleges?
So the old mom and pop helped me for the first 2 years of my 5-year stint getting a 2-year degree, and the remaining 3 years, Kevin decided, Kevin, as I refer to myself in the third person, decided to take 3 years to finish because I decided to get married very young, have children even way younger, and balance paying the electric bill, food on the table, and all that while still going to college. So my weapon of choice was a credit card during those years.
And so that's how you financed college, was on credit?
The second half, yes, it was via credit card. I am happy to say that I have 0 student debt.
Are those credit cards all paid off?
Yes.
Okay, then you do actually sit at 0 student debt.
I paid that off a decade ago. I mean, I've had 0 college debt.
All right, so you paid it off a decade ago, but that means you carried it around how long after graduation?
Only about 2 or 3 years.
Oh, well, that's actually excellent.
IPFW is very, very affordable. So first off, because it's the local, I can't call it a community college, but I guess it kind of is. I didn't stay on campus, so I didn't have room and board. I just had tuition, and I think it averages like 8,000 a year to go there. It's pretty reasonable.
Averaged 8,000 a year when you were there
for full time. So the 3 years that I was going there, I did not go full time. So one of the trade-offs was I had to go down to like couple of classes a semester, and truth be told, towards the end I was doing really crappy in chemistry and physics, which I needed 2 sciences to graduate. I just didn't have the time to put in for either one of those, so I switched over to botany and zoology. I showed up for the first day of each class, got the syllabus, figured out when the tests were. I showed up for the tests, and that's all I did.
And you still passed?
I got C's in both classes.
C's get
there was one complication. Zoology did have a lab, so I did have to go. The labs were required, so I had to cut apart animals. So, yes. Yeah, I think I hacked the system there. I will let you know that all the knowledge I did gain from botany and zoology was absolutely not needed in my current.
Well, let's put a pin in that, and we will come back to that.
Okay.
I should take this opportunity to thank my parents for helping fund a large majority of my education. I arrived at Ball State University with an educational scholarship, the Indiana State Scholarship. I don't remember what it was called. Presidential Scholarship, I believe it was. And so I was paying a whopping $256 a semester my first few semesters at Ball State because my scholarship covered everything but books. Not room and board. I lived off campus, lived at home. But of course, I started to enjoy college and my grades did not maintain. So I lost that lovely scholarship a few semesters in, and my parents were cool enough to make up the difference. I did work to cover my expenses pretty much all through school, but also factor in that I think it was a whopping $3,600 a semester without the scholarship. So times have changed.
So I just realized I only gave you half the story. So you asked me how I paid for college. So my first degree from Purdue was just as I described. My second degree, my 4-year bachelor's, came from Western Governors University. And believe it or not, my first degree I graduated in 2001. My second degree I graduated in 2013. A little bit of a gap there.
A little bit.
And the second degree that I had or have was paid for by Uncle Sam. And as some people know, I was in the military for 6 years active duty. And one of the best benefits that are offered to military folks is free school. Basically,
so, is that the GI Bill?
That is the GI Bill. And it got changed thanks to Senator John McCain. We got something called the 9/11 GI Bill, which totally changed how it works. So back in the day, it used to be the Montgomery GI Bill. And then for my era of soldiers, we got the GI Bill for it's the post 9/11 or whatever it's called. And I paid $0 to Western Governors. The government paid it all. I didn't have to front any money. In fact, the government also gave a stipend to me. So they basically paid me to go to school.
Good for you, man. You earned it.
You get a living expense. So I'm a huge advocate of combining college and military, not because, I realize that there's a stigma with military that people are totally against, and I get that, but I didn't exactly go off killing people. I basically worked on computers for 6 years and got a free education out of it.
When you enlisted, we were in peacetime, right?
No.
You enlisted when we were not in peacetime. Ooh.
I enlisted in 2004.
That's ballsy.
Yeah, and not to segue too far, 2004 to 2010 was when I was global war and terror type stuff. Middle East a few times. Yeah, definitely at war. In fact, I was a little in 2004, it was right around the mission accomplished thing, and I was like, oh man, the war is going to be over, and I just signed up. I know it sounds terrible, but you kind of want to at least go see the world, you know.
But you still advocate for that as a way for kids today to, offset college costs.
Yeah, so there's two ways to hack the American government for education, or at least through the military. Number one is enlist, and you get GI Bill. And then there's three ways. The second way is also enlist, and if you already have a mountain of debt, they'll pay it back for you. So let's say you went to big school, and you're like, I'm in debt to my eyeballs. Now what am I going to do? The military will pay it back for you.
So you have degree in hand, you enlist after the fact, and they will reimburse you.
Yeah, so
that's a pretty sweet deal.
So here's the deal. There's a trade-off. It's like signing a deal with the devil a little bit.
Always.
And I had several friends with me. So you cannot be an officer in the military unless you have a 4-year degree. So when I joined, I had a 2-year. I didn't have the choice to become an officer. Boy, I wish I could have been, let me tell you. But if you have a 4-year degree and a mountain of debt, you can become an officer and they won't pay anything back. Or you can decide to take the blue pill instead of the red pill, and you can become enlisted, and then they'll pay it back.
So only enlisted members get it reimbursed.
Correct. Now, of course, I was never an officer. There could be some benefit that I'm unaware of on that side. However, the last way to do this is ROTC, which is Reserve Officer Training Corps. So basically, I just graduated high school. I'm going to go to my school of choice. Let's say Notre Dame, very expensive. I got accepted there, but I have no idea how to pay for it. Well, join the military, and for a paid 4-year degree, you now owe like 4 years to the American military as an officer. So you get to become an officer from day one. You don't have to worry about your education costs, but you do owe 4 years of public service in the military. So that is
after graduation.
After graduation, correct.
So you're doing your ROTC training while you're in school, and then you graduate and you become an officer
upon graduation.
Services. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Dang it. Now there's another way. You can also, if you know a senator.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. If you know a senator, you can ask them to give you a referral to a service academy. West Point, Air Force Academy, Annapolis, etc. However, I don't have any senator friends hanging out next door to me. And I think that's one of the things you need. I think you have to have one of your senators give you that referral. Anyway, I don't know much about that. Definitely don't have those kind of connections. But anyway, that's what I can tell you about the military and college.
All right, so let's fast forward to students today. So my son is a junior in college, so he's been going for 3 years. And he actually attends a private school. And so before he went to school, when he was a junior and senior, when he was exploring school options, we looked at all the pricing. And I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is pricing. And I think a lot of people want to think that their in-state institutions offer the most affordable options for college. And our experience was that is not necessarily true.
Okay. Can you give me insight? Because I have one that's a junior in high school right now. He's going to be looking.
Yes.
So give me some info, some insider stuff, Bob.
So when we were young, when Joshua was trying to find schools, we looked at those state schools that were close for a couple of reasons. Maybe we could save money on room and board, and maybe the tuition would be cheaper. And so you go and you look at the price and you're like, all right, on the surface, we have a state school that's less than 20 miles away, and it was $28,000 for 4 years of college.
Oh,
for 4 years?
Wait,
no,
per year.
Yeah. Sorry, 28 per year.
Okay.
Yes, and that did include room and board. Okay. So it was 28 per year, and Joshua was really bright, and they offered him a scholarship that basically, over the course of 4 years, was going to give him 1 year free. So, still was going to be walking out of there with $75,000 plus worth of debt. So then flip to the other side of the coin, and you're looking at a private university, which is also about 20-ish miles away from our home. And it is a small school, but it's a private university, and tuition there is $42 a year. However,
Uh-oh.
his educational scholarship right out the gate was a 50% reduction in tuition. So all of a sudden, the tuition for that private university was exactly on par, almost apples to apples with the state institution.
So where are you going to get this voucher, or how much I get a Groupon, for lack of a better term?
Well, when you apply for colleges, you send along your transcripts, and all universities have their base scholarships that you really don't, just by applying to the university, you're in the system for applying for those scholarships. There's a handful of students, well, more than a handful, especially in the private universities, that qualify for these different levels of scholarships. And they're really just designed to make that private education more on par with the public schools, the public colleges, because they know it's a competition. So when you're looking at a private school and you're going, holy cow. And here's another thing to keep in mind. I would say that based on my experience, there's a very small range of people who pay sticker price to go to college because of the vast variety of scholarships and grants that are available.
Right.
And then really, for the most part, what those scholarships don't make up for, financial aid almost fills the rest of the entire gap.
Right. Isn't the financial aid, though, based on like your household income? So it's almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. The more you make, the less you get scholarship-wise.
Yeah. So, well, that doesn't really determine your scholarship, but it definitely determines your financial aid.
Right.
But it boils down to the type of financial aid that you're available for. There's financial aid that doesn't accumulate interest until post-graduation. And then there's financial aid that starts generating interest right away. I can't remember the exact terms for it, but there's two different types. And so Joshua basically gets, on top of his scholarship, I think he gets like $10,000 a year or $11,000 a year total in financial aid. So then he has, a gap.
Yeah.
But he took a job as an RA, and the RA actually covers your room and board. So
Really?
He has a job. Yes. So he has a job. He's a residence hall advisor. It's kind of a 24/7 gig, but I mean, he does have some leeway, but that closes the gap substantially. So he gets paid, covers room and board. And I think that's like 10-ish a year. So he's left at about $5,500 a semester that he has to cover.
Okay. So
that starts to bring it much more into picture. Everybody's going to, take a different approach to the working and stuff, but think about that. That's a private school education at 42 to 48 a year. No, that's a semester.
So like my wife, when I met her, she was in school to be early education, elementary.
Early childhood. Yep.
And like the state of Indiana pays like nothing to these people who want to raise our children or teach our children in school. And like, I think like the base income that year when this was a decade ago, was like $35,000. Congratulations. Here's the $100,000 in debt. So you can go out and make $35,000. So have you learned anything about major selection versus some sort of correlation between, well, you need to be looking at the major, not necessarily because you want to be that, because that one will pay you more in the future?
So a couple different schools of thought on that. So to be a teacher, you kind of have to have that education degree or that education certificate. I don't know much about getting that certificate after you graduate, but it kind of makes sense. If you want to be a teacher, you probably should go to school to be a teacher. It's just probably the path of least resistance. Now, does it pay a ton when you get out? Not when you get out, but it does actually. I do believe that correct district selection, blah, 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 you can actually earn a decent living being an educator.
That's what I've learned. I've learned that our neighbor states pay way more than our home state. So, even if you go to school here, you're going to be like, hey, well, I would like to live here, but I can't.
I also don't know any teachers who only work the hours that people think they do. Like they work around the clock. It's insane.
Yeah.
But there are programs that will, much like the military programs or similar, not much like, that will forgive student debt for teaching in underserved communities. So if you elect to teach in an underserved community, there are programs that will forgive your educational debt.
Okay.
So that's an approach as well, because Josh was an education major for a while.
So rewinding just a little bit to the financial aid.
Sure.
I remember this. It's the FAFSA. I can't even say it now.
I still can't say it because I get yelled at every time I say it.
Have you seen any sort of, is this like a race condition? Like, as soon as you can fill it out, or is there, can you tell me a little bit about this?
So we were warned along those lines as Joshua was approaching that age that you really needed to be close to the front of the line. But in true Beatty Bar family fashion, we just didn't really push that ball as fast as we needed to. And that had no impact on his financial aid.
All
so
right.
You don't have to be in front of the line. I would turn it in late.
What about scholarships that are, you said you just applying, you kind of in the running, but what about, have you ever had to chase any scholarships that are outside the beaten path, and have you had any success, or your kids, that is?
So I'm going to make some broad sweeping generalizations about my children here. I have 3 children who are all vastly different human beings, but I have 2 male children and a female child, and my male children don't really have the get up and go that my youngest daughter does. So Josh didn't really chase scholarships like we wanted him to. Owen started to, and didn't really, he chased it hard, but didn't really get much results on the scholarships that were outside of the just signing up to go to the colleges. My daughter has been watching those 2 situations unfold, and I'm sure she's learning from those situations. And she will, she's been already combing over and finding out what kind of opportunities there are. There's tons of scholarships out there, but man, it's such a competitive gig because guess what? College is so damn expensive.
And there's a lot of rules, because I actually tried to apply for several, and there's a lot of I didn't realize how demographic oriented they are. There's some that are only for certain genders, certain races, certain... Yeah,
the organizations that offer the scholarships, they can totally establish those rules. And so, so not only do you have to weed through the ones that you're even eligible for, but, then you have to, determine, is it worth the $500 scholarship to write the essay?
Right.
Some of them are low-hanging fruit where you just answer questions, but then it's really like a lottery. And Beatty Bars don't win lotteries, so...
Any sports success stories in the family, like any sports scholarships? Like
not for school.
Anyone good at darts, and that college happens to be like a dart league or something?
It's so funny that you mentioned that though, because Owen, my middle son, he came up with a scheme as he was approaching the idea of going to college that if he wanted to get some extra financial support, all he needed to do was find a D2 school where he could match the high jump or pole vault. So he was researching what the D2 like pole vault records or triple jump records were at these various schools. And he was going to see if he could walk on and get a scholarship.
All right.
And that was pipe dream because that didn't pan out at all.
All right. So now for something a little different.
Completely different?
No, in the same vein. So we've talked about private schools. We've talked about public schools. I guess we haven't really informed our international crowd, all 2 of you, both of you. School or education, secondary or post-secondary education is not free here in America. It's a investment, and it's a decision that you have to make, and where you have a lot of countries, it's you want to go, it's free or whatever. So it's not free here, and that financial burden falls on the student and or the parents, and that's up to the student and the parent on how that works out. So we've talked about private, we talked public, state, and before I go to my actual real topic real quick, state tuition, in-state versus out-of-state. Do you know why that is? I know it seems like an obvious question. Is it because the states are supplementing the state colleges? Is that why they're giving a discount, so to speak?
I feel like that might be more about economic development than anything else, but it could be along those lines of the funding. I guess, if I'm paying taxes in that state, and part of my taxes are going to fund those state universities, I shouldn't have to pay an extra whammy. So people who are out of state and not paying into that tax base, I'm sure that's why it's like that. But the weird thing is there's tons of reciprocal agreements throughout the states. So like there's some like I think Illinois and Iowa have a reciprocal agreement, and it might be on a state college to state college level as well. Because I know that some states, when they're trying to recruit, I think Missouri actually has this as well with Illinois. So there's some schools in Missouri that you can attend and pay in-state tuition, even if you're from Illinois.
So we talked public schools, private schools, and I think we understand what that is. And what's interesting is, implicitly, those are all not for profit. People aren't trying to make a profit on somebody's education. So let me offer Full Sail University, which is kind of the poster child of a for-profit private university. And they make no bones about it. They are looking to make money. I think the average tuition is in the $20,000, $25,000 per year range, and that does not include room and board. So this is definitely pricey. However, what the promise here, and I think Mitt Romney used Full Sail as a see look, this is how we can keep education prices down. I don't know how mid 20,000 per year is keeping it down, but
that's how ridiculous it's getting.
I don't want to. I don't know how the numbers work. That's why we're doing this talk here. But anyway, Full Sail University is kind of an interesting thing, and I had never heard of Full Sail University until the guy who runs this, Ryan Connolly, who does Film Riot. I'm kind of big into his work here. He talks about Full Sail University all the time, and if he would have just came to me and said full-time or a private for-profit university, I would have just scoffed at you at first. I still scoff at it, but I would have scoffed at you more had I not actually saw somebody who go there and speak positively about it. So it's expensive, but the promise here is this is using state-of-the-art, stuff. Because what's one problem that I really hate about higher education is they're teaching a 10 years ago curriculum. They're, in my opinion. So you go to a university right now, you don't, the textbooks don't have today's learning. It has yesteryear's learning in it. And so the promise of these newer universities or these for-profit ones is, no, you're going to be working with industry professionals. We're going to bring them here. You're paying for it, and it's going to be up to date. But
so are those supplemented by like independent business ventures? So like if I'm a bright shining tech company and I want to have almost like an incubator for future employees, do I dole out cash to incentivize students via scholarships here, or do I, pay for the tech lab that's on campus because I want my best and brightest coming from there?
I don't know the answer to your question, but I wouldn't have any problem if...
No, it seems like a very viable solution to me.
If we could invent the Bob and Kevin University, we were for profits, and we had Microsoft stopped by, and they brought the checkbook, and they said, hey, we would like you to teach not just what web forms are from 5 years ago, because that's what's possibly in the curriculum right now, like not even kidding. We would rather you teach Azure, today's technology, stuff like that. And here's a check to make sure that you have the staffing and the resources to do that. I would say, thank you, Microsoft. I would love your money. Where would you like your logo, and how big would you like it to be?
Right. We can Microsoft University if you want.
Yeah. So just inventing things here. So I wouldn't have a problem with that. So
I wonder if that is part of their model. I mean, I guess we'd have to research it a little more, because this is the first time second time I've heard of Full Sail, but they are both from you. So
okay, so because I looked into this for my teenager who's into he makes great videos. He's a communicator. He makes videos. He's into marketing. This would totally be up his alley. They do music, games, art, blah blah blah.
All right, so here's the segue then, because I know we wanted to cover this too. What makes you think that university is going to benefit Grant? Because I feel like he's so ahead of the curve already.
So the word that I've been overusing, and I'm going to use it again, is value proposition. What is the value proposition? So That is a great question because I look at 25,000 a year. And by the way, they have an accelerated program, so you're only there like 2 years. So it's like a $50,000. But you have to find your own place to live. This is North Orlando, essentially. It's
Right.
Winter
And it's
Park,
still
Florida.
expense. Right.
It's definitely going to cost money. And then just yeah. So it's a value proposition, and it's up to Grant because at the end of the day, I don't have a check to write for. Here's 25,000 this year. Ha, there you go. Ha, don't spend it all in one place. Ha ha ha. Oh wait, you will. So it's really up to him because he's a part of this agreement. So if he doesn't find value in it, then I don't care how cool it is. I was actually looking to go to school in Canada when I was a youngster and didn't have any ties to children or anything. This is early on, and I think it was called DigiPen, or it might have even been Washington State. It was far from Indiana, and it was to make video games, and it sounded so cool, but the money was just like ridiculous for somebody like me. So it was just like it was a dream, and that's all it was. So if Grant would want to go here, he would have to say, yeah, it's worth $50K or plus room and board to do so, and that's really on him. And I gotta try to help him because he's 17 years old and can't really probably fathom how much $50,000 really is. So that's a great question, and I have not answered that because I can contrast that against the local college, Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne here. It's $8,000 a year times 4. That's 32 grand, and he can live at home with mom. So savings of 18 grand. If it were me, it's more of 18 grand because you got to add tuition. If I had to do it over again, I would still not have all the answers. I would still be like, I've made it this far and I still don't know.
Yeah. I mean, how many times has your college education been verified by an employer?
Well, I wouldn't lie. So, ooh. Okay.
No. I'm not saying that like you would, I'm not suggesting someone would say they had a degree and they didn't. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is like, I don't think mine has been verified. Like what? And mine's in journalism. What the hell do I use mine for?
Journalism. Wow. Where's our subscribers? Way too few subscribers. Hashtag. Okay. So, a lot to think about there. So, for me, a college degree kind of proves one thing and one thing only. It proves you can be trained and stick with something. Or I guess those two things. So there's that.
One and one thing only. Two.
It's like Furbies or Gremlins. You get them wet and
multiplied.
Okay,
quickly multiplied.
All right. So I can tell you in my trade, in our trade, the college degree really didn't do shit for me, other than allow some old arcane HR department allow me to get through from one pile to the other pile. That's honestly, I am not kidding you, what I perceive my X number thousand of dollars. That's all I see it right now.
Right.
I didn't go away and
the resume phase.
Right. I didn't go away to a different college somewhere else. I have one from an online. So I didn't make this like roommate connection. Now we're going to make Facebook or anything like this. None of that's going to happen to me. Those are also survival stories. Those aren't like all you got to do is go to college and you'll be the next Facebook because you had some wazoo roommate. Not going to happen. Sorry. I learned most of my trade on the job. School of Hard Knocks taught me more than any university ever has or ever will. Now,
well, and I think for most professional fields, that's going to be the case. Unless you're going to be a doctor, you're probably going to learn your chops before you're practicing.
So I would say it's industry specific. Now, here's another contrast. Remember I said an online degree and a on-campus degree. The on-campus degree is exactly what you think it is. Show up, write some papers, go party. That's exactly what it is. My online one was totally different. We didn't have grades, which may sound like totally weird. What? You didn't have grades and you have a degree? So you had a class, and every class had a certification. And it was proctored. So I have an A+, a Net Plus, a Security Plus.
Oh, but so you have professional certifications.
I have about 30 certifications. Bob, I have a Java certification from Sun Microsystems that I will never in my life ever use, but I had to get one to pass a class. And you know what? If you already know what you think you know because you're 30 something and you've learned a lot of this stuff, you can fill in the gaps real quick and go just test out. And by golly, I tested out like 3 classes in one day. I just said,
Well,
I'll
yeah,
take
so
this, and this. And
that would definitely be a benefit of being a non-traditional student, because you do have some of that School of Hard Knocks training already underneath your belt.
Now, here's the problem with that. That it's great. I've got a bunch of certifications that are now all probably already expired. It's been 5 years because now in today's day, certifications only last you like 10 minutes. But when you study for these exams, even the certifications, the ones by Microsoft, the ones by CompTIA, like the A+, those things are from like 10 years ago, and you got to watch all these you have to use like Internet Explorer because you can't use Chrome because they're all delivered to you by Skillsoft, which is a Java in-browser applet, and Chrome and all that doesn't work. They're like, what is going on? And then like the window is like this much of your screen.
Right, because it's 640 by 480 or 800 by 600.
All pre-recorded, and you just want to hit next, but the button's grayed out. And then you get to the end, and then it's like, one day XML will take over HTML's role. And I'm like, no, stop it. And then you realize, like, I'm not learning anything. Then you take the next class, and you're like, okay, that clarified that one thing I had that I could have just Googled. But yeah, cool, whatever. And then, and then, I got a degree after all. And again, if you were to take a student out of that environment and just drop them into a workforce, they will probably cry. So in our trade, you also have to want to learn this stuff. And all the stuff that you want to learn, you got to teach yourself and your colleagues. You got to be paired up with smart people who are smarter than you, so they can look at you and go, I see what you did there. But no, we don't do it like that. Oh, that's great. That's good if you're doing like, guess the number between 1 and 10 in 3 chances app. But, so.
But that's what we build in school.
Exactly. So it's a value proposition. So when the GI Bill pays for everything, hell yeah, it's a great deal. Because I get to go from pile A to pile B because now I have a bachelor's degree.
Right.
And if it cost me $100,000, I might tell you, I already have a job maybe, and why would I just give $100,000 away from it? No.
Yeah, it's a lot of ground to cover as a fresh graduate.
So it's a bit of a paradox for somebody who's 17, 18-ish, 19, right? Because they don't have OJT, they can't get hired very easily. Now, Grant, he has had some success, so that might be very tempting to go, I don't need college. That may be, but you have to then carry the burden, the stigma of you're always going to be in pile A. You can never go to pile B. It don't matter what you know, you'll never be in pile B.
Yeah, but he strikes me as one of those kids and there's a lot of people out there that don't need a resume to get a job.
True, but so if we look at the economy where I live, it's if you want a programming job, you either are in finance or you're in defense contractors. Both of those are old guard. You have to have X, Y, and Z requirements, or you don't even get a call.
Right, you got to check the boxes.
So if you want to be, I taught myself guy, look what I did and look what I can do, you're going to have to also relocate.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I would think that for a lot of kids, there's only a small percentage who are growing up in the major metro markets of the United States that are going to stay there. Everyone else has got to go where the work is.
Absolutely. But not everyone is built for that. Not everyone is built to cut the cord and leave the nest, and just say, okay, London, here we come. Denver, here we come. When you grow up in a small rural community, a big city is not Kansas anymore. So, there's a lot of influence here based on whether or not, where you come from, where you're going, what you can do, what you can't do, and all this. So, it's a decision that you have to live with too, because if you make the wrong decision could be going to that college and amassing $100,000 in debt. The wrong decision could also be not going to college and regret. So there's a bit of trouble either way. But wouldn't it be great if there were a third option, Bob? Because
I was going to say the one thing we haven't talked about is trade school.
Yes.
Or UTI is, I guess, is that technically a trade school?
Yes, it is. In fact, when you're transitioning from the military to civilian life, they give you an idea of what your options are as far as benefits, VA benefits and whatnot, and trade schools and colleges are pushed really hard. And if you're interested in trade schools, they're totally UTI is right there going, hey guys, we take GI Bill money. Come on in,
Right. So this Technical Training Institute, UTI is also a university that you have to pay to go to, right?
It is, but it's less expensive and non-traditional. You're not doing a whole lot of algebra here or calculus.
Unless it's required for your trade.
Full disclosure, I don't know what their general ed requirements are. So, but yeah, vocational is definitely something that we should talk about.
Well, there's another option too, because that UTI is still another paid option. There are options where you can get paid to do your training. And I have recently spent some time with the in the Southwest, and toured a couple of their training, well, actually just one, but they're all identical there. They have these giant training facilities where they train carpenter apprentices, and you get an apprentice rating when you start attending the school, and you're actually sponsored by an employer. So you're technically getting paid to get your training, and it's certain times of the year. And so, you're working on job sites, and then you go in and get this training, and it's amazing training. And they cover, every aspect of carpentry in these facilities. And so they have them for every one of the trade disciplines. You've got your plumbers and pipe fitters, you got your electricians, and you've got your carpenters, and they all have facilities like this. And they're really just designed to, tech these kids up so that they can be more productive in their trade, and they get paid to do it.
So is the topic of prep school type curriculum in high schools too hot for this discussion? So, because some schools have a vocational track that you can self-identify, or parents can say, hey, you know what? He's totally into welding. Can we just kind of go down the route of trade? Or Sally over here, she's totally going to be a doctor. Can we just, not deal with shop class for her,
The crazy thing is when we were younger, and probably a little bit, what are we, 4 years apart? I don't want to make this gap sound too large.
7
years apart. Is it really 8 years apart? All right. Yeah. It's almost 8 years apart. Yes. Darn it. So anyway, vo-ed programs at the high school level were giant when I was in high school. But, because of funding and because of this huge push to send kids to college, vo-ed programs have suffered both financially and from an enrollment standpoint. And I know in our area, we still have vocational education programs, but they have been shrinking, and we're struggling as a community to figure out how to bolster that back up, because it's needed. Somebody's got to make this place run. Somebody's got to build this place. Somebody's got to, we just all can't sit behind our computer screens and magically everything's going to happen.
Absolutely. So what is the single best advice that you've probably amassed over the last few years, because you've got, the 3 kids in various states of college and going to college soon? What advice can you lay on us?
Well, this is going to be, this can probably go outside the whole educational aspect of it. First and foremost, you got to find a way or learn a way to be happy with where you are. And not everyone is supposed to go to a 4-year degree. Not everyone is supposed to go to grad school. Not everyone's supposed to leave their education with $100,000 in debt. There's so many other options out there. And if you can contribute to the world without having to do that, and it could make you happy, you can always go back. It gets harder, but you don't have to slide in that track. And I wish that message was getting taught to kids even younger, because we're really starting to lock kids into this weird, almost this escalator that they can't get off of. And it just costs more money, and it costs more emotional energy. It's really rough, and we're not letting them choose.
That's interesting, because I can tell you. So I was in my immediate family, mom, dad, brother, I was the only one to actually attend college. But for whatever reason, I was put under, I feel, an enormous amount of pressure to go to college. Like there was no, it's just like being married. It's like, you will be married, have children, and go to college. Any questions? Okay.
No, you were totally in that generation still where it was, you got to go. I mean, like we were on the front end of that. You have to go, you have to go, you have to go. And of course, out of my 4 siblings, I'm the only one who went.
So
I don't know why they weren't pressured to do it either, but
let me ask you this.
Really stuck with me.
Without putting you on a spot or creating any family strife, do any of them, do you think, regret not going? Or
not a single one of them. They are all super successful in their very own rights. Every one of my siblings is an amazing individual and they do wonderful things for the world and they don't need a degree to do it.
What about you personally? Since you went to college, was your value proposition in favor of supporting, yes, college was a good decision?
I think college was a great decision for me because I decided early on in that experience how that experience was going to work for me. And I knew enough about myself. I was self-aware enough at that age to know that regardless of what my degree was going to be in, I was going to find a path that challenged me and kept me going.
I can tell you when I got my 2-year degree, it took me 5 years to get, I was happy to have a degree, but it kept, kind of like working on my mind that I didn't have a 4-year degree. So it took me 12 years to get back to school and finish. And I can tell you once I did finish, it was a huge weight off my emotional shoulders, so to speak.
And you're a finisher. I can totally see that. Like when you leave something half done or not finished, it eats at you. I know this about you.
Oh, yeah. And the irony is I did not need a 4-year degree. To this day, my last X number of jobs, I don't think a single one of them would have gave a rip if I had a degree or not, because I think they saw, oh, this is what you can do. I don't care. ABC College of Basket Weaving. Yeah, sure. We don't care. Can you do it? So
I choose carefully every day to be in a field of employment where nobody lives or dies based on what I do. That is a very intentional choice.
And it's interesting because, where I work and hopefully where you work, nobody will die if software doesn't make it out the door. But you go
Correct.
farther towards the Pacific Ocean, it seems like it's the opposite. It's like people will die if you don't. So it's kind of interesting how nuances and I'm talking about Silicon Valley, which I don't have any love for whatsoever.
Right. That's a cultural issue that needs to be fixed because the owner wants to make $1 billion, it doesn't mean foot soldiers have to be in line for that.
Yeah. I was part of a startup, been a part of a couple startups with stock options and stuff like that. It is just not worth trying to make somebody else rich for the amount of effort that they put in, especially when you're not empowered to make decisions where you have to react to somebody else's kind of warped view of how things are supposed to work, and it just makes it tough. Anyway, okay, I'm really digging in where I shouldn't. But I think college is I don't think we solved anything here, did we?
Nope.
We just kind of
shared some information, shared some experiences. There's no one answer. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it was a good talk, Bob. Did we miss anything along the way?
I don't think so. I think we got down to trade schools and options. So I think that was last on the list.
Yeah, you were like, as long as we don't go 48 or 40 minutes, and we're at 48 minutes right now. So
that is the natural duration of our program.
Yes. All right. That's when we both get sleepy because we're old and we need to take naps now. So
yes, the fire is making me sleepy.
All right. We don't need fire. We need something else. What do we need, Bob?
We need to bring the lightning.